Hey guys, thanks for coming back and joining us here at Salty Ginger Talk. Glad to have you back. So today our episode is going to be talking through 10 tips and or quotes from people who have been married for 30 plus years to the same person consecutively. So my wife and I recently celebrated our 31st wedding anniversary. I'm very happy about that, obviously. We were married very young. We were 21 and 19 when we got married, and we were 22 and 20 when we had our first son. So we didn't waste a lot of time. We were fortunate to find each other young in life, and we just knew pretty quickly that this was the right thing for each of us. And it just made me think, we've been through lots and lots of stuff together. We've both spent over half of our lives with each other, much longer than we've spent with any other person, parents or siblings or whoever. And, we've had tough stuff happen. We've had financial challenges that we've had to deal with. We've had professional challenges that we've had to deal with. We've had personal challenges that we've had to deal with. Losing jobs, moving around, all sorts of things that a lot of times will lead to the end of relationships. And, we've been fortunate that it's never ever come anywhere near that for our relationship. And so I was thinking, what are some things that just bridge across relationships that are like just true of any relationship that exists out there? And thought it would be good to spend a little time looking at those, talking through those quotes, and kind of sharing those with you. With that said, I would encourage you, I say this a lot. There are only two people that understand how a relationship works, and that's the two people in that relationship, and that needs to work for both people. And if you keep that front of mind, you've got a good shot at being successful. You gotta really think about what's important to you, what's important to your spouse, and make sure that those things are aligned a lot more than they're not. Because you're not always going to see things eye to eye. You're not always going to have the same opinions. You're not always going to share the same beliefs. And those things aren't fatal if you don't let them be fatal. So, with that said, let's just dive in. I found these quotes just from various articles, relationships around. I threw in a couple of my own, but these are from people that have been in marriages that lasted 30 plus years to one person. So there's some value in there, some things you can think about and refocus on. And so let's just dive into it. So the first one, become a student of your spouse. When you notice the little things, they feel loved. So I would argue that this is much more important than grand gestures. The 25th wedding anniversary trip or the super expensive anniversary ring or diamond earrings or car or whatever. Those are great. Don't get me wrong; those are great. But it's the everyday things that matter, and it's the everyday things that make someone feel like they're special to the other person. So, for example, in my relationship with my wife, she drinks the bubbly water. That's what she prefers to drink. And so we actually have a fridge downstairs that is dedicated to just her water. And I pay attention to the level of product in that fridge. And I go by and fill up that fridge when it gets low. So she never has to worry about having the water. When we travel, I'll go out and find her some bubbly water. It's a little thing. It's not a huge deal. Could she drink tap water? Sure, she could. Would she drink tap water? Sure, she would. But it's a little way that I do, something I do to make sure that she knows I think about her. She knows I care about her. Another example is she doesn't fill up the car with gas. I always fill up the car with gas. So I just check the gas tanks, a couple times a week. And if they need gas, I'll just zip up to the gas station, put gas in them. Little thing, she doesn't have to get out when it's cold. She doesn't have to worry about some scumbag harassing her at the pump. So it's a little thing that we do. And she does all sorts of little things for me, knowing what particular foods I like, or, I like ice in my drinks. So she always makes sure that if I'm low, she'll grab some ice. Just little things that we can do for each other. So understand the little things that are important to your spouse and participate in or take care of those things. I'll go a long way to making your spouse always feel like you're thinking about them and you care about them because you do. So, number two, if you were looking for the best person you could marry, remember that you married the best person you could find. Years may pass and time goes on, but that person is still in there. I think that's a great way to think about it. My wife and I talk about that a lot. We were fortunate to meet young, um, at the risk of uh, sounding cocky. I didn't have to settle, so I didn't. I married the person I wanted to, which was my wife. My wife did not have to settle. She married the person she wanted to, which was me. So, regardless of what's going on, when things are tough, when things are different, when you have to deal with change, and you're going to have to deal with a lot of that in life, especially if you have children. Um, just always remember that the person that you married, you chose to marry them. Nobody put a gun to your head. It was a voluntary exercise, whether you're the one that proposed or you're the one that accepted. There were lots of stages at which you could have called that whole thing off. But you married that person, that particular person, for a reason. And they married you for a reason or multiple reasons. And it's always important to keep that in mind. You might not always be happy with them, things might not always be rainbows and unicorns, but that person that you chose to spend your life with is still there somewhere. Even if a lot of other stuff has changed, that person at their core is still in there somewhere. And you're still that person at your core in there somewhere. So don't ever forget that. Always keep that in mind. Three, never neglect your spouse. You know what I mean. And there's lots of subtle little ways that show that you don't take your spouse for granted or neglect them. And speaking in general, broad general terms, men and women like different things. And men like to be valued for different things, and women like to be valued for different things. I get it. It's 2024. There's plenty of macho women and there's plenty of sensitive men. But at our cores, men are protectors and providers, and women are nurturers and multipliers. And those are good things. You shouldn't discount those things, but you also shouldn't take it for granted or neglect that they're going to keep providing those things. So it's stupid. But, every once in a while, I'll just walk by my wife and say, "You're so pretty." And I mean it. She is pretty. She's a very pretty lady. But I don't just think it, I say it out loud to her. Or, "Hey, you're such a good mom. Our kids are so lucky to have you as their mom." Just a little compliment like that can go a long way. She'll do something silly like come up and grab my arm and say, "Oh, you're so strong." I know she's doing it just to be silly, or maybe she wants something. Like sometimes she'll do that and say, "I was hoping we could go buy something," or whatever the case may be. Still works 31 years later. I still like that my wife is attracted to me. I still like that she looks to me to provide protection and sound off her ideas to me. She rambles a lot. I tend to internalize things and deal with my thoughts and emotions internally. She likes to talk about those things out loud, so she'll ramble a lot. And I love when she rambles because it lets me know what she's thinking about. So if there is somewhere that I can help provide support, help her think differently, it's useful. And she's one of the few people that I'll confide issues in the world. And I put a lot of value on that. So don't ever neglect your spouse. Don't ever let those things go without saying. You can't be too complimentary. You can't be too nice. Those things are important. For men are great at doing many things, but they can't read minds. I tell my lady friends and family members, you owe it to your husband to communicate with him frankly. Men don't like intrigue from wives. So I think that's a really important one. When you think about the differences between men and women, men do tend to internalize things, and women tend to kind of emote things outwardly until they get to their spouse. How many times have you heard someone say, "He should just know"? Well, you know what? We don't. Men are idiots, and you knew we were idiots when you married us. Like there was a lot of things that you looked and said, "Why does he do that?" Like we've always been that way. We're always gonna be that way. The good part about men is the man in your life is almost always willing to help you solve a problem, help you deal with a problem, help you through difficult things. But you got to hit them over the head with it. You got to be very specific and say, "Hey, this has really bothered me and I want to talk about it. I could really use your help on this, and here's why." Um, we're not going to guess. We're not going to read between the lines. It's not what we do. We're results oriented, we're problem solvers, and we're very happy to help you solve problems when it's necessary. If you just tell us, if you just talk to us about it. But don't be subtle, Don't drop hints, don't drop clues. Be very direct about what you're looking for, and most of the time, I think you'll get it. And I would say the opposite for men. You've got to approach your wife and ask her, in a gentle way, what you're looking for from her. They're not as direct, they're not as results oriented as we are. They live a lot more in the gray areas than we do. And if you want to be successful, you have to factor that in to your approach. And again, you got to ask yourself, do you want to be right or do you want to be successful? I would argue in a relationship, it's almost always better to be successful than it is to be right. So there's that one. So here's one: never cuss at each other. You might be mad, but never cuss at each other. Work it out respectfully. That's the person you married. Couldn't agree with that more. You need to treat each other with respect. And I take this to a different level, to a different topic down below. But you shouldn't talk to your spouse the way you would talk to a friend or a buddy. I can tell you, I completely disagree with I married my best friend. Not true. I did not marry my best friend. I want a relationship with my wife that is different than any relationship I would have with any other person on the face of the earth. So it's cool if that works for you. I married my best friend. I'm just not in that camp. I don't agree with it at all. I don't think your spouse is your friend. My wife can't be my best friend. She's not a man. She doesn't know what it's like to be a man. I don't know what it's like to be a woman. I've never had a period. I've never delivered a baby. I've never done a lot of the things that only women can do, and I'm never going to. So I can't empathize what those things are like. That's what friends are for. I did not marry my best friend. I married my spouse, my wife. So don't cuss at them. Treat each other respectfully all the time. So this is a great quote. I love this one. In every good marriage, it helps sometimes to be a little deaf. So not everything is fatal. Not everything that's said out loud is meant. You don't have to take everything personal. You don't have to take everything serious. And sometimes you're a lot better off for just letting things roll off your back. I'll give you an example. So in a group of people one time, like in mixed company around other couples, my wife said out loud, "I've never been attracted to good looking guys," which was very funny. So what she meant to say was, "I've never been attracted to pretty boys, to uh, like model looking guys. It's just not what she's into," which good news for me because I'm not that guy. If you want someone to, fight their way out of an alley to get you to safety, I'm your guy. If you want someone to have your back and be willing to go to the mat for you, I'm your guy. But if you're looking for someone to be on the cover of GQ and go, "That's my guy," I'm not your guy. That's not who I am. And I knew what she meant, and it would have been easy for me to get all upset. And she said it in public, she said it in front of other people, and there was, "Oh, what do you think about that, Joe?" And I just laughed and said, "Yep, that's my wife, ladies and gentlemen. You can't make it up." So that's the kind of support I get. I knew what she meant. I knew what she was driving at. It wasn't bad natured. She just said something silly, and it's not worth getting in a fight over. So every once in a while, if you hear something that you don't agree with, or just let it go. Just let it go. It's not that big of a deal, and have some confidence in yourself. Have some respect, self-respect in yourself, and know that your spouse cares about you. Now, if someone's intentionally being mean to you, you look fat in that, or "Hey, you really fucked that up," that's a different story. But sometimes being a little deaf is a good thing. Let the little things go. Pick your battles. Those things aren't important because they're not meant. There's no intent behind it. Try to think about what their intent was, and you'll wind up in a much better spot. Next, and this one's very important: learn to fight respectfully. Things aren't always going to be rainbows and unicorns. You're not always going to hold hands and skip down the primrose path. Things are going to be difficult, and you'll never have more difficult conversations than the difficult conversations you'll have with the people that are closest to you. Switching gears a little bit, I told my sons all the time when they were growing up, "It's not my job to be your friend or your pal. It's my job to be your dad. I'm the only one who has that job, and I love you enough that I'm going to tell you the truth. So I'm just going to come at you with both barrels, and it's going to toughen you up. It's going to get you ready for the world. That's great." You should love your spouse enough that you can be respectful when you disagree with them. Nothing worse than when a fight turns personal. It's a terrible place to be. You're going to want to reconcile at some point, no matter how worked up or angry or upset you are in that particular moment. And it's a lot easier to do if you don't have to go back and say, "Hey, I don't, I shouldn't have said that." So, if you go back and watch, we have an episode called My Two Vasectomies, and I actually had to have a second vasectomy because about 6 years after my first one, my wife found out she was pregnant at a doctor's appointment. And I went in and got tested again. And when the doctor told me, hey, you're live again, your body fixed itself, he said, what do you have to say? And I said, I guess I should call my wife and apologize about that lying whore comment. And he was like, you didn't. I said, no, I didn't. It never occurred to me that my wife went out and was screwing around. I knew something had to go wrong. I'm glad we know now what it is. But, that's a situation where things could have got real dicey real quick because unless you're super religious and believe in a second immaculate conception, there's only one way babies are made. And if it wasn't me, that would have meant somebody else, and that would have been problematic. But never was a worry, and was a non-issue when we went through that situation. So next, avoid global statements. Global statements are really bad to make. They're rarely true. We're all going to die. That's a global statement that's true. But when you say things like "you always do this," that's just false. No one always reacts the same way to a situation. No one always does something. And when you say those things, what you're doing is conflating one or two instances that have rubbed you the wrong way, and you're making it adversarial, much more adversarial than it needs to be. So avoid global statements. If you say, hey, it really bothers me when you do this, and I've noticed it in these situations, that's a much more constructive way to surface an issue with your spouse than it is to say, you're always this way, or you never pay attention, or you never listen to me. When my wife says that, I'll always just say, what? So trying to just, bring the temperature down a little bit and make it a palatable way to have that conversation. So learn to fight respectfully, avoid global statements. Those things are going to be critical to your long-term success for your relationship. Next, and this one's very important, and I can tell you everyone, whether you realize it or not, has been on both sides of this equation. So marriage is not 50-50, it's never 50-50. Oftentimes it's 90-10, and that goes both ways. Each has to be a giver and a taker. It doesn't have to be even Steven, and it barely ever is. Trust is so very important. Share responsibilities. So I just could not agree with that more. I can tell you, like a recent example in our relationship. I had a pretty significant heart surgery in 2023, and it just kind of happened all of a sudden. So I didn't feel great one morning. I went into the ER to get checked out. They kept me, and the next morning I was having heart surgery. So it was pretty serious. It was scary to my wife for sure. It was odd to me because I was never scared. I probably should have been, but no one's ever accused me of being the brightest guy in the world. So after that, she's been a stay-at-home mom for like almost our entire relationship. So we've been fortunate that I've been able to provide enough for our family to do the things we want and build what we want and etc. But it scared her, and so she decided she needed to go back to work. I didn't think she needed to go back to work. I didn't think she'd be happy. If I thought she'd be happy going back to work, I'd be her biggest fan. I didn't think she'd be happy doing what she was doing, and she worked for about a year and decided, hey, this sucks. I don't know why I did this at all. But for a year, I was very supportive. I said, I don't know if this is what is right or not, but if you feel like it's something you got to do, you got my full support. And I fully supported her. She got promoted 3 times during her year that she was there, which did not surprise me in the least. She is super intelligent, super capable, super hard worker, very organized, great at dealing with people and leading people. But at that point in our marriage, that's what she needed. And I was okay with it. Like, I didn't think I disagreed with her assessment, but that's fine. The only way I thought she could bottom out on that was to do it. So she did it. I was fully supportive of everything that she did. So for that period of time, she needed more out of me than she got previously. And I was happy to give it. There's been other instances where she has been the support for me. And I've taken way more out of the relationship than I've given at specific periods of time. And you need to be okay with that. You need to be okay that you're going to get what you need out of it, and they're going to get what they need out of it. And at different times, they're going to need to take more, and you're going to need to give more, and you're going to need to give more or take more, and they're going to need to give more, depending on what's going on in your lives. And that's okay. That's okay. It's not a problem. If it's lopsided all the time and you're not getting what you need to have a serious conversation with your spouse. But you got to be honest about it and be honest about the times you took more than they were taking and they were supporting you, because it's never a one-way street in those scenarios. So um, I think that one's super, super important to remember. And then the last one, this came from a divorce attorney who said, I see lots of commonalities in divorces, and this is like a canary in the coal mine. So if you're still healthy, you should be having sex. If you are not having sex on a regular basis, you're just roommates. I can't tell you how important the physical intimacy is in an adult relationship. If you don't feel like it, figure out how to feel like it. If you're not attracted to your spouse anymore, figure out why you're not and fix it. Because if you don't have the physical intimacy in your relationship, you've got a big problem coming down the road. It might be closer or further away than you think, but all I can tell you is if you're not having sex on a regular basis and you're both healthy, something's wrong. You got to get it fixed because it's going to take you down at the end of the day. Um, and I know that in our world today, we kind of glamorize casual relationships. I've never been a casual relationship guy. I get it. I understand the appeal of having sex with a lot of different women. It was just never my thing. I wanted to have a committed relationship with someone and then do whatever the hell we wanted within that committed relationship. So those two things are not mutually exclusive. And if you're not having a healthy and robust physical relationship with your spouse, you got to figure out what's causing it and get it fixed. It's terribly important. So there you go, guys. Those are 10 tips for people married for 30 plus years. I happen to fall in that category. I'm very fortunate that I've been able to build my life around the relationship that I have with my wife. I've spent over half my life with her. Don't regret a second. Hoping that it lasts a lot longer and we get to continue down the path we're on together. And if you keep these things in mind, I think it's going to give you a leg up and really help you keep your relationship healthy and vibrant. And I hope that you're all able to experience what I've been able to experience, because it's by far the best thing in the world that I've ever experienced is having a family with my wife at my side to do it. So hope that's useful. Hope you can take some of those tips back and incorporate them into your relationship. Don't forget to go over to our website, saltygingertalk.com. All our content's there, all of our podcast episodes available there. You can subscribe to our newsletter there. And don't forget to like and subscribe to our podcast on whatever platform it is that you consume it on. Really appreciate you coming back and checking us out. Hope everybody has a great week, and we'll see you next time.